A team of geneticists once ran a simulation that should unsettle you. They mapped the DNA of a modern newborn against the DNA of a human who lived 30,000 years ago, and the result was almost embarrassing in its simplicity. No meaningful difference. Same brain size, same wiring, same raw potential. Which means somewhere out there, if the timing of birth had shuffled differently, the person reading this sentence right now could have been born instead as a hunter tracking bison across an ice-covered plain, and the hunter could have been born as you. That thought experiment is the doorway into a much stranger question. What would actually happen if you could reach back and pull a real, living adult human out of the deep past and set them down in the middle of today? Not a reenactor, not an actor in furs. A genuine person from 30,000 years ago, standing on a sidewalk, blinking under streetlights for the first time. The first thing to understand is that this person would not be stupid, slow, or primitive in any meaningful sense. Paleoanthropologists studying skulls from this era have found brain cases essentially identical in size and structure to yours. Cave paintings discovered at sites like Lascaux in France show shading, depth, and anatomical precision that modern art students still study. Flutes carved from bone, jewelry made from shell and ivory, evidence of trade routes stretching hundreds of miles. All of it points to a mind fully capable of abstraction, planning, and creativity. The intelligence was never the missing ingredient. Only the century was. So picture the moment itself. The first sensation wouldn't be confusion about ideas. It would be raw sensory chaos. Electric light with no visible flame. Sound pouring from a speaker with no musician in sight. A screen glowing with moving images. Cognitive scientists who study sensory overload describe this kind of experience as more overwhelming than frightening at first. A nervous system built to notice subtle shifts in wind, animal tracks, and firelight suddenly flooded with input it has no framework to sort. The brain would work exactly as it should. It simply wouldn't yet know which signals mattered and which ones were noise. Language would be the next wall, and a taller one than most people expect. Even if this person's ancestors passed down complex spoken language, and evidence suggests they did, the specific words, grammar, and sounds of any modern language would be completely foreign. There would be no bridge, no partial understanding to lean on. Communication would have to start from nothing, the way it does between two people who share no language at all, built moment by moment through gesture, tone, and repetition. But here's where the story takes a darker turn than most people anticipate, because the real danger wouldn't come from confusion or fear at all. It would come from something invisible. Modern humans carry immune systems shaped by thousands of years living alongside dense populations, domesticated animals, and diseases that evolved specifically because humans started living in crowded cities and farms. Measles, influenza, tuberculosis, illnesses your body was trained to recognize before you could even walk, thanks to exposure and vaccination folded quietly into modern life. A person from a small, isolated group 30,000 years ago would have never encountered these pathogens. Historians studying first contact between isolated populations and outside groups have documented death tolls reaching staggering percentages, not from violence, but from ordinary illnesses that a modern immune system barely registers. The subway car, the crowded elevator, the office break room, these mundane spaces could pose more genuine danger to this person than any predator they ever faced on the open plain. If they somehow survive that biological gauntlet, though, the story bends towards something hopeful, because the very traits that kept this person alive 30,000 years ago are exactly the traits modern life still rewards. Reading subtle social cues, solving unfamiliar problems with incomplete information, adjusting strategy the instant circumstances change. Anthropologists studying hunter-gatherer cognition point out these are not soft, outdated skills. They're the same mental muscles used today by anyone navigating a new job, a new city, or a crisis with no clear playbook. The brain wasn't simpler back then. It was just aimed at a different set of problems, given enough time, exposure, and safety. Most researchers who study human cognitive flexibility agree this person could learn to function in modern society, not as a curiosity, but as a capable adult absorbing new information, the same way any of us do when dropped into unfamiliar territory. Given a generation, given children raised from birth inside modern schools and modern language, the outcome is no longer even a question. Study after study on human cognitive development shows that environment, not ancient ancestry, determines whether a mind becomes a hunter or a physicist, a gatherer or an engineer. Which brings the story back to that geneticist's simulation, the one comparing a modern newborn to a person who lived 30,000 years ago and finding almost nothing different underneath the surface. The gap you imagine between prehistoric humans and modern humans was never really about intelligence, capability, or worth. It was about inheritance, the invisible gift every modern person receives simply by being born after language was already built, after medicine was already discovered, after electricity was already tamed. None of us earned that inheritance. We were simply born on the right side of it. So the next time the phrase caveman crosses your mind, picture something different than the stooped, grunting figure pop culture handed you. Picture someone with your exact mind, sharp, curious, endlessly adaptable, standing in the wrong century, surrounded by light. He didn't understand in sounds he couldn't place, doing the only thing any of us would do in his position, watching closely, learning fast, and quietly proving that the distance between him and you was never as far as it looked.